Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. On Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern, Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
Welcome to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, publisher of Aspire Magazine, the premier inspirational digital magazine for women since 2006. I'm also the best-selling publisher at the boutique publishing house, InspiredLivingPublishing.com, where we publish books that inspire, empower, and support women in living their best lives. In fact, be sure to watch for our new book coming out on October 24th. And you can learn more at CourageousHeartsBook.com. You know, impending motherhood serves up a confusing cocktail of heroic strength and terrifying vulnerability. And our culture has seized on the vulnerability part of this experience and tends to reinforce a pregnant woman's insecurities instead of encouraging her to embrace this most natural time and trust her body, her intuition, and her own mind. Today, Bailey Gaddis, author of Feng Shui Mommy, joins me to share her very different approach, an approach that helps the expecting mother build her own unique, epic journey to motherhood, an approach about supporting this mom while she shores up her mind-body-spirit alignment so she can best handle the cosmic kick in the uterus and juicy kiss on the soul that pregnancy is. Welcome, Bailey.
Hi, Linda. Thanks so much for having me.
As soon as your book came across my desk, I'm like, oh, yes, we are having this conversation today. And just that phrase that you just read a moment ago where you're right. There's so many fears around pregnancy. It's all we hear, right? You know, look at all the books that are out there. But you came at it at such a different way, a way that really resonates with me as a woman. And I'm a mother, and now I'm a grandmother. And I'm like, where was this book when I gave birth 33 years ago?
I know. That's why I tell people I wrote it because it's exactly what I needed when I was going through my journey with my son.
Well, take us back to that. Take us back to what led you to write this book.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I became pregnant, my wonderful partner Eric and I were in a great relationship, but it was an unplanned pregnancy, so it really threw us for a loop. And we really had not spent a second preparing before we found out that we were pregnant, and so we really had to dive in. And it was a really incredible journey, but I felt like, all of the information I received in classes and books, they were very clear about, what I needed to do. And it's like, this is the philosophy you need to subscribe to. And I didn't really feel empowered to make my own choices. And I felt really disconnected from my intuition. And so something, felt off during my pregnancy and during childbirth. I had a lovely experience, but again, I didn't feel that sense of empowerment. And so when my son was about 3 months old, I became certified as a hypnobirthing practitioner. A few months later as a birth doula, and really thought, okay, well, I want to dive into knowing more, to creating my own, vision of what this is, of what this journey is. And then I started thinking, okay, well, what about a book? And it just kind of snowballed from there. And, and like I just said, I wrote the book that I felt like I needed to read, something that would inform women, give them the information about the phases of labor and whatnot, but primarily help them tune into their intuition, their maternal instincts, gut instinct, whatever you want to call it, and empower them to really honor that and follow the advice of that inner wisdom as they're moving through, pregnancy, childbirth, and then, of course, motherhood. We really need to lean on those instincts. So, yeah, it's been quite a journey.
Well, I love it because really it brings the sacredness back.
Yes.
Right? Because you're bringing women back into touch with it themselves, right? Instead of putting all their power outside themselves by saying what everyone else is telling us we should do when we're pregnant or in the delivery or as a new mom. So that's what attracted me to your book. It was like so empowering, right? Because your book speaks to us, I think, at a soul level, right? It's giving great tips and strategies to incorporate change, but it spoke to me, I'll say, at a soul level, because that's how my soul envisioned a pregnancy should unfold, right, from the inside out.
Right, exactly, and that's what I felt like it was the most important part, because, you know, again, having the tips and tricks is great, and it's definitely in the book, but, you know, pregnancy is such a transformation for the woman. And I feel like the enormity of that can often be where a lot of the fears come up if we don't realize, oh, okay, like I'm also shifting into this brand new person, and, you know, it's not just my body that's going through changes, you know, but my emotions, my spirit, you know, everything is transforming. And so when we can acknowledge that, I think a lot of the fear can start to dissolve.
And how'd you come up with the Feng Shui Mommy? You know, like, was Feng Shui a part of your life, or is it just what you turned to? And how does this all tie in together?
Yeah, so before I became pregnant, or actually I was still doing this when I was pregnant, I was a professional home organizer in Los Angeles. And it was interesting because most of my clients, they were pregnant and wanted support in creating a really serene nursery. And so we would use a lot of, you know, the really like simple feng shui principles, you know, like good lighting, not having a lot of clutter, fresh air, utilizing colors, having really nourishing plants around you, you know, having a few auspicious objects. So that's when I was first, you know, really introduced to the idea of feng shui. I won't call myself an expert, but I really, again, connect with, you know, the basic principle that our surrounding environment, you know, impacts our inner environment. And so I kind of created kind of my own definition in a way of feng shui when I started to write the book, because I thought, okay, yeah, it's really important to figure out, you know, how to have a really balanced, harmonized energy around us. But what about, you know, balancing and harmonizing the energy in our mind and our body and our spirit? And so that is really, you know, what being a feng shui mommy is essentially, you know, knowing yourself and being equipped with the tools to realize when we're totally thrown out of balance and feeling out of whack, and knowing, okay, this is how I can realign myself with that balance, that inner state of harmony. So yeah, the book ties into, again, the more traditional feng shui. I give tips for how to actually transform the home, but, you know, going a step beyond that and going within the woman's, you know, experience or inner experience, I thought was really, really crucial.
Oh, I believe it is crucial, because the transformation that we go through, like you said, it isn't just physical. And a lot of the stuff that we got coming at us from the outside world is all the physical changes. But there are deep spiritual and emotional changes that I think a lot of the content out there doesn't always address. And then a woman doesn't understand what's happening to her on the spiritual, emotional level, and she starts judging herself.
Oh, absolutely. I've worked with a lot of clients that, you know, had postpartum depression, postpartum blues, and the judgment, you know, feeling so much judgment towards themselves and so much guilt. And, you know, it was making it worse, unfortunately. And so one of the main things I do when I'm working with women that experience that is to go within, you know, instead of looking at all the external things like, oh, I can't keep my house clean, and I just can't seem to figure out my baby's sleep schedule, you know, kind of all these external things. And so usually the first thing that we'll do is, you know, really go within and look at, you know, who she is now, and really touch base with, you know, the spiritual, emotional aspect of who she is. And I think if we can do that, you know, during pregnancy, then when the woman slides into motherhood, it can be a much more gentle experience for her.
That's what I love, because as a childbirth preparation educator, a birth doula, and a hypnotherapist, you're always working with the pregnant women. And I can envision what the transformation is for them, to have someone that's there along the pregnancy to teach them these things. And then, of course, you also get the blessing of seeing these gorgeous kids as they are born and come into the world. But what a gift you're giving the family, the mom, but as well as the family, the gift of her being present for this pregnancy.
Yes, yeah, that, the birth doula work I do, actually seeing everything that I teach put into practice, and then of course the moment of birth. I think I cry every single time I attend a birth. That is really what has informed most of my work is, not just like thinking about how certain techniques and philosophies, would apply to a pregnancy and childbirth, but actually watching a woman go through that profound transformation, definitely, during pregnancy, but during childbirth. I mean, it is so powerful. And I've always been struck by, how amazing, in my opinion, it is that each and every birth I've attended has been different. Even if it's a medicated birth, or a unmedicated birth, they're like two women on paper can have the exact same experience, but when you're actually there, those two experiences are so different. I mean, it really is this unique, sacred process.
And that's how I feel. The word sacred keeps coming up as we're talking, because you're bringing this wealth of wisdom, but also real life experience. You're there in the trenches, right, with women as they experience in every emotion through the pregnancy. But as you said, you're there to witness the transition from woman to mother. That, I can get so emotional because it's such a powerful thing. And I can remember watching my granddaughter being born and watching my daughter, that moment. It's a transition. There is no going back. And you have a mom now. It was so beautiful. So I'm getting all mushy because it's bringing back my granddaughter's 5.5, and I just remember feeling the sacredness in the room for my daughter, for myself, but for my daughter, who that was her first child, is her first child, only child right now, and to be present to that. So I know what a gift it was for me, and I know that was my child, but I can't imagine the sacredness that it would be to see it over and over again with women and the work that you're doing. So, what a blessed life. What a blessed job to have.
It is, and it never gets old. And seeing that moment, I mean, you described it so well. There's this moment, you slowly see the transformation during the phases of labor, but there's something about the woman's face I've noticed when she first holds her baby. I mean, it's like I can see the transformation in her face, and I've heard it described from so many women, and I felt this when I had my son. It's like all of these hidden trap doors that you never knew existed, that were holding back reserves of love, just completely flood your system. And at least with most women, I mean, of course, some women have postpartum depression and have to work to discover those doors. But so many of the women I've worked with, I mean, I can just see those. It's like floodgates. That's the perfect word. Like floodgates releasing love in their body, and their face changes, their whole demeanor changes. It's extraordinary.
That's so beautiful. When we come back from our first break, I want to talk about, I know the answer, but I want our listeners to know, because your book includes sections about 4 trimesters, right? But there are only 3 trimesters in a pregnancy. So when we come back from break, I'm going to have you explain that. And I'll be back in a moment with Bailey Gaddis, the author of Feng Shui Mommy, Creating Balance and Harmony for Blissful Pregnancy, Childbirth, and Motherhood. You can learn more at baileygaddis.com.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Inspiration for a woman's soul. Aspire Magazine, inspiring and supporting women on the path of self-discovery. Claim your free digital subscription today, which includes access to thousands of dollars of personal development bonus gifts from Team Inspiration partners. Claim your Aspire Magazine subscription today at subscribetoaspire.com.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism. OMTimes Advisors. connecting you with the best advisors in the business.
Do you have time to read that inspiring book or that blog post you've been meaning to get to? In your busy world, how do you improve yourself and keep your life going? I'm Lisa Kay, and my Between Heaven and Earth radio show can transform your life just by listening. Be uplifted with inspiring topics, positive stories, and ideas that really work. Between Heaven and Earth Radio is conscious living for your soul, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time.
Hey, America, we need to have a little talk. We've got more food than we know what to do with in this country, yet 17 million kids in America are struggling with hunger. Makes no sense. Luckily, the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks has volunteers gathering excess food and getting it to hungry kids. They're kind of like food angels. Hey, become a food angel yourself by supporting Feeding America in your local food bank at feedingamerica.org. We can't do it without your help. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
This is OTR-FM, part of the IOM Radio Network.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, and today we're talking with Bailey Gaddis, the Feng Shui Mommy. And we're talking about, the sacred birth process. Not just the birth of a child, though, the birth of a woman into a mother, the spiritual and emotional transformation that a woman goes through that sometimes isn't really talked about. So, Bailey, in the book, you, as I said before the break, it mentions 4 trimesters. So come on, tell us about this.
Yes, so the 4th trimester is, that term is often used to describe the first 3 months of baby's life outside of the womb. And it's considered by some to be a trimester because really it's, for a lot of women, one of the most challenging phases of this whole journey because, when the woman is pregnant, really all she needs to do is, eat well, take care of her emotional needs, her physical needs, and hopefully, her baby's taken care of and her baby grows and is healthy. But when the baby comes out, the mother still hopefully is able to take care of those basic needs in herself, but is now also needing to take care of the basic needs of her child, the feeding, the getting them to sleep, changing diapers. It's like her responsibility has now doubled, and it can be incredibly overwhelming. She is still recovering from childbirth. If she's choosing to breastfeed, that's a pretty wild journey, especially in the first few weeks. I mean, there's so much going on. And I felt like, in a lot of classes, a lot of books, everything ended, right when the baby was born. It's like, okay, now good luck. And I felt like, wait, what do I do? How do I breastfeed? What can I expect my body to do? What is my baby going to do? I mean, I just felt clueless. And so I thought it was really important to include the 4th trimester in the book so the woman, could feel like she at least kind of knew what to expect. I mean, of course, every mother, every baby is different, so there's not one set, prescription for what they need to do, for a diaper change or diaper rash or whatever. But I really felt like if they had some of those tools moving into the 4th trimester, then, the emotional side of it, which really, again, like we've talked about, is the most profound change during that 4th trimester, it makes that a little bit easier, and they're able to spend a little bit more time thinking about, how their life has shifted and how they can support that change.
Especially if they read your book, while they're still pregnant and not, after the baby's born, because then they know what to expect and they're not judging themselves when emotions and feelings come up, because they're in reading your book, they're going to realize there's natural parts of the process, right, of feelings that may come up. And I think for me, like you, I mean, I had my child many years ago, but I was a single mom and thankfully had her dad has always played a big role in her life, and my family was there, but still, no one had those conversations with me. Right, about the emotional, the spiritual. Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, and when this happened, you're going to go to the hospital. That means the baby's ready to come. That's it. That's what I was told. Right. It's not the fears that come up, the all the questions, and I think that's why your book is such a gift to women. It speaks on a deeper level about the things that happen during that process.
Thank you. Yeah, and I wanted to make sure, I included, I'm looking at some of the chapters in the fourth trimester right now, and I'm thinking about the chapter that's on bonding. And I felt like it was really important to acknowledge, we hear so much about, oh, it's just blissful and you'll just fall in love instantly, but to acknowledge, the women that don't have that instant bonding and in a non-threatening, really supportive way, speak to them, and let them know that, hey, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. I mean, I felt like that was really important throughout the whole book, talking about special circumstances during pregnancy. I mean, the things that aren't incredibly rosy, but there can be positivity found in them, and we can acknowledge those things without filling the woman with fear, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because by keeping it unspoken, that automatically puts them in fear. By bringing it to light, they stop this judgment of themselves. I believe so anyway. They're like, oh, I'm not alone. Other people have felt this. Let's bring it into the light and talk about it. Because a lot of times, and I've had a friend that did have severe postpartum depression, but the funny thing, she was existing in her life, and she had 3 other children, all young. And she was existing in her life, Bailey, but because I knew her so well, there was no joy there. And finally, I spoke to her, and she said, I just feel like I'm overwhelmed, like she felt like she was on autopilot.
Yeah.
And she said, I feel bad that I'm not as connected to the new baby as I was with the other 3. And I said, because you are in postpartum depression, and talk to your husband about it or talk to your doctor. But just me bringing it to light, she broke down and said I couldn't talk about that to anyone, about how I was really feeling about my connection to this last child. And bringing it to the light, right, which we're talking about, helped her move through it. Because she was she was carrying that weight, thinking, oh, my God, what kind of mother am I? Yeah. And by us bringing it to the light, she was able to move through it, discuss it with who she needed to discuss it with, instead of carrying it as a weight, a burden, a guilt.
Right. And it allows them to breathe. I mean, I feel like when you bring something like that to light, it's like, oh, okay, like there's hope inside. I can seek support now, now that it's not just my secret. Yeah. Oh, that's a beautiful way to put it, is bringing it to the light.
Yeah, because just like anything, right? Anything we're trying to work through in our own lives, whether we're pregnant or not, we can't heal, change, or transform something we don't acknowledge.
Exactly.
Right? And so that's why in the work you're doing is you're helping them see both sides. And I love there was something I had said in the opening. It's like when I introduced you, it says, motherhood serves up a confusing cocktail of heroic strength and terrifying vulnerability. Isn't it so true? Because you have heroic strength, like, come near my child, and I'm Superwoman. But at the same time, you're so vulnerable that your heart is walking outside your body.
Exactly.
Now, for the woman who's in her first trimester of pregnancy now, what would be your best piece of advice if you could speak to her right now?
Yeah, well, I spoke about this a little bit earlier, just about the intuition, but I think the first trimester is often a time when we are inundated with opinions. When we first let people know that we're pregnant, we're first asked all the questions. Where are you going to birth? What type of birth do you want? What type of prenatal vitamins? I mean, we get all these questions, and usually right after the questions, we get, the quote-unquote answers from women that usually are incredibly well-meaning, and they just want to let you know what worked for them, and they think because it works for them, it'll work great for you. And so, again, we're just bombarded by opinions. And I think that can be really overwhelming for the woman. But if she can step back and say, okay, my first step in this is going to be to tune into that intuition. And I have exercises in the book, like very clear exercises about, how to do that, because that can sound really abstract, right? Like, well, what is my intuition? What does it sound like? How do I listen to it? So I have exercises to support that, but, learning what that voice sounds like, that inner wisdom, and number one, realizing that it's there. Every woman has it. Every human has it. Even children, they have this intuition about, how to get onto their right path. So I think when the woman starts connecting to that intuition, then, she can start seeking out information, asking questions, reading books, but then she can have a more discerning eye and realize, oh yeah, this tool or this piece of information really resonates with me, and I think that really worked for my journey. Or, you know what, this one story or this one tip that I received from this person or this book really doesn't sync with me, so I think I'm going to leave that behind. So as she's going, she's just picking up, ideas and tools and tricks that will lead her towards, quote unquote, her right action, which is different for each individual. So yeah, tuning into that intuition helps her to not be steamrolled and helps her to, again, make choices that work for her and her baby.
And I love that you give tips on how she can do that. You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah. So one of the really basic exercises I have for the intuition, and I have a few breathing exercises to help with that, but really it's about, asking yourself, and you can start out small, asking yourself little questions. What do I feel like eating right now? Or what book do I want to read? And just listening to that first answer that comes up before our mind starts analyzing and judging and, chattering, and just noticing that what that first answer is, and then honoring that. Say, okay, I'm going to eat that food, or I'm going to, read that book, and just noticing how your life becomes a little bit easier, because you're not spending so much time hemming and hawing over everything. You trust that intuition. And then once you start trusting that, you can ask the bigger questions. Who do I want my medical care provider to be? Where do I want to give birth? What types of parenting philosophies might I align with? And kind of go from there.
Oh, beautiful tips. So thank you so much. When we come back from our break, we're going to dive in even deeper with Bailey Gaddis of Feng Shui Mommy, Creating Balance and Harmony for Blissful Pregnancy, Childbirth, and Motherhood. You can learn more at BaileyGaddis.com.
Free your mind. Expand your soul. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Moms, do you often find yourself overwhelmed, frustrated, and feeling guilty? This can be a sign that you're not taking care of yourself, which creates a ripple of energy throughout your family and can impact your child's health. Amanda Hinman of Hinman Holistic Health Institute knows these feelings all too well. Amanda is a family health coach and the author of Vibrant Child, 7 Steps to Increase Your Child's Health and Happiness, and she's the mother of 4 young girls. When she found her family in the midst of multiple health crises, she began to look at her role in it and took action to empower herself, transform her family's health, and has supported hundreds of moms with her proven process to go from frustrated and overwhelmed to confident and empowered. Take the first step today and claim the Vibrant Child Starter Kit at Hinmans.com.
OMTimes Magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. OMTimes, co-creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Hi everyone, this is Shay Parker, the host of Best of the Best, which airs live right here on IOM Radio every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific. I'm super excited to bring you expert guest hosts, spiritual discussions, free psychic readings, and so much more. I can promise that you will not want to miss this one-of-a-kind, fun, yet touching, down-to-earth show. Join us every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific on OTR-FM. This is Shay Parker, and I can't wait to see you there.
The number one reason girls drop out of school in sub-Saharan Africa is lack of access to feminine hygiene products. The Pads for Schoolgirls Project, an outreach of Humanity Healing International, is changing this paradigm by setting up sewing programs at schools, teaching girls a vocational skill, while producing the reusable pads that help keep them attending classes. The girls pay it forward by making and giving pad kits to other girls in need. To learn more, visit humanityhealing.org. Humanity Healing is where your heart is. A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Welcome back. You're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm Linda Joy. With me today is Bailey Gaddis, and we're talking about motherhood, birth, the transformation that a woman goes through. And Bailey, you just shared a moment ago some tips and guidance for a woman who is in her first trimester of pregnancy. What does a woman do once the baby arrives? You know, like you said earlier, it's like, oh no, it's all mine? What do I do? I remember that feeling.
Yes. So, there's a few things that I tell women right after the baby is born. Number one is, going back to those instincts, knowing that you can trust your instincts for the most part. Every baby is different, and so you're going to go through this getting to know you process with not just your baby, but really who you are now. And it might surprise you, things that now you are worried about, or things that you're not worried about, or your self-care regime. I mean, so many different things shift after baby is born. So being gentle with yourself as you get to know baby, as you get to know your new self. Again, trusting that really you are the person that knows what's best for your baby. When you really look within, you do have the answers, but then also cutting yourself some slack when sometimes your instincts might fail you, and you look back, it's like, oh man, I wish I would have done this instead of that. We all have those moments, right? We make mistakes, and also knowing that you deserve support. So I tell women, figure out who your support network is. Those people that will give you a big yes when you ask them to maybe come over for an hour and hold the baby so you can shower, or come over and do your dishes. I mean, really set up that support network, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
That's a big one, is not being afraid to ask for help, because I think a lot of moms fall into what is, out there in the media, that you have to be a super mom.
Exactly.
Superwoman, and I think that's where a lot of the burnout and self-judgment comes in.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. I mean, because we can't do it all on our own, or we can, but yeah, we'll eventually burn out. So, asking for help is essential, and it's really a very selfless thing to do instead of a selfish thing to do.
Yeah, as I had shared with my friend, I said, asking for help, just as you said, because she also had other young children. I said, there is nothing wrong with you taking an hour to yourself. If that means just go and sit in your car in a parking lot and read in your favorite book, if you can't, go into the library, anything.
Right.
But you have to, because if I believe, just as women in general, that when we take care of ourselves, because we're the nurturers of our family, it ripples out. Right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And so many women, I guess I'm speaking from past experience here, I was one that always put myself last on my to-do list. I was really guilty of that in my younger years especially. And what happens? You're exhausted, you're grumpy, you're not fulfilled. Well, that makes you a real fun mom to be around, doesn't it?
Right.
And then I as I got older, I wised up, and I even said that to my daughter from the moment my granddaughter was born. I've taken her one night, not overnight, but for them to go out to dinner from the moment she was born every week. I said,
wow, that's amazing.
you need sacred family time, couple time I call it, and then every month an overnight. And then, and she lives 1/6 of a mile up the road. She's at the end of my dirt road, and I'm seeing her this afternoon, in fact. But
amazing.
But that's how important I believe it is, that sometimes moms forget themselves, and sometimes, I don't know if this happened to you, but it happened to me, we forget the relationship that created the baby, right?
Right.
We kind of push it aside because we jump into this role, and I think that's why I've done this with my daughter, because I know how important that is.
Well, and you're so right. I mean, the relationship, I mean, if you do have a partner when you're moving into motherhood, it's so easy to let it slip away. My Eric and I, the first year of Hudson's life, he was in graduate school, and he was so busy. I was taking care of a new baby, and and I looked at our relationship, and while it wasn't tumultuous, I was like, wow, we kind of like feel like roommates. We really have so little time to connect. And so in Hudson's second year of life, luckily I have my mother right next door to me, my mother-in-law just 20 minutes away, and we started to do that as well, really making a conscious effort to go on a date night once a week, to having an overnight trip. We kind of followed the pattern you just talked about, going away together, and we kind of woke up. It's like, oh yeah, we fell in love for a reason. We are on this journey together for a reason, because we really enjoy hanging out together. and that's key, just hanging out together and having some fun, can really put the light back into your relationship.
It does, and because life comes at us fast and hard, whether it's adding to our family or job or work, career, it doesn't matter. And I that core relationship, right, is so important, and usually it's the one that gets pushed to the side when and I didn't want that to happen. And I think for me, my mom was really good when I was a single mom, letting me work and do all that and really helping out. And I remember what that spaciousness felt like, and that's another one of the reasons I do it. On top of, I love to, squeeze all the time, and I can with the little goddess. I call her the little goddess. Yeah, and I truly enjoy it. And my grandson is 17, so he hit that age of not wanting as many cuddles just as the little one came. So
right,
yeah, but it is so important. It's so important for our mental health, our spiritual health, to have that time and to give that time to our relationship, so it doesn't become that you feel like two strangers passing in the night, which can easily happen when a child comes into the picture.
Oh, right. Absolutely. I mean, we get so busy, and I mean, again, it's easy, but it's, I can see the difference in my son, when Eric and I, if we're not really connecting, my son just feels, it's like he can sense it, I mean, even if we're not even arguing, but we're just not connecting, my son kind of gets thrown off. But then when Eric and I come back from, a trip and, we're really connected, we're having fun, it's light, my son absorbs that energy. I mean, it really does, the whole family is affected by that relationship.
Yeah, and I tell a lot of my private clients and that, we're the nurturers, as I shared earlier, we're the nurturers of the next generation, right? And how we show up in our home and how we show up in our relationship is teaching our children what a healthy relationship is. So if you're in a distant relationship, it's teaching a young boy, this must be a healthy relationship. Or you're teaching a young girl, if you, like in my case many years ago, I was in probably a passive-aggressive, emotionally distant relationship, right? On the outside looking in, it was great. But I remember looking at my daughter, who was 5 at the time, and I had a step-daughter who was 3 and a stepson that was 8. And Bailey, I woke up one day and just said, oh, my God, I'm teaching these girls that this is a healthy marriage, and I'm teaching him that it's okay to show up as a man, passive-aggressive and emotionally distant, and I left a month later. Yeah. I didn't have the strength to leave for myself, because from the outside looking in, people thought I was crazy for leaving, right? They didn't know what it was like in the home. Right. I never could leave for myself, but I left for them because I said, oh, my God, I'm modeling something that I would never want them to live.
Right. Well, it's powerful.
And it's something now I'm really passionate about, and that's why I love having guests like you on my show. Because there are other ways of living and being and showing up fully in our lives. And as a new mom or a pregnant mom, it's even more important, right, to have these tools and resources to be able to live authentically, to show up fully, and to feel confident in our own decisions.
Exactly. And that's, really the goal with this book. And it was so interesting as I was writing it. I mean, I felt the changes in myself as well because, it's like to practice what you preach. I'm like, okay, like I'm really going to show up and do, all of these things that I'm writing about. And that's a really beautiful way of putting it, just living more authentically, like fully showing up. I feel like, in a lot of ways that's the goal of the book, to fully show up for this experience and realize that while it can be fraught, of course, with challenges and discomfort and, of course, like all of that's there, but that's not all of it. So often we're told like, oh, it's just painful and you're going to be bloated and, like all of this stuff to not look forward to. But it's like, but on the flip side, it's like you are going through the most amazing, powerful journey you'll probably ever go through. And on the other side of it, I feel like if we can really harness the power of that transformation, it's easier in so many ways to like fully show up in your life and to be more authentic. I mean, I felt like before I had my son, I was afraid to show my authentic self. Like I was really guarded and felt like I need to show people like a certain part of myself because I won't be accepted for my full self. And now it's totally changed. It's like I'll happily share my faults and, really show my true self. And I really credit that towards, the transformation that I experienced in pregnancy, childbirth, and of course, motherhood.
And how old is your son now?
He just turned 4 a few weeks ago.
So look at, and this is what I love about the sacred gifts that come out of something when you're open to receiving. I mean, I know you were already in the field, as a birth doula and childbirth preparation educator, but it took you going through your own journey to birth all of this. But see, I love that your path led you to exactly this, because it was you had to experience childbirth yourself, I think, to pull all this wisdom together, right? Because you were witnessing it and everyone else, but when your soul opened up with the birth of your son, it was like, oh, yes, this is what I've been witnessing every time I helped a woman give birth.
Oh, yeah. I mean, experiencing it on that, like, that visceral level. I mean, feeling myself go through it and seeing the change. I mean, it really woke me up and put me, again, like, on the path to, not just who I needed to be as a mother, but who I needed to be as a woman, and I wouldn't be, sitting here talking about this book and, working with women in the way I do now, if I had gone through that unexpected journey that ended up being everything. I mean, it was just such a powerful shift.
It's a heart-opening experience. And we're going to be back in a moment, and we'll be back from our last break. And I want to talk about what led you to writing this book, right? What led you to say, because it's vulnerable to step out as an author, I know, because I work with many authors, and I love that you just said, I'm going to do it. So we'll be back in a moment with Bailey Gaddis of BaileyGaddis.com.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Take the first step to radically transform your life and business. Being an entrepreneur takes courage. Forging a path that is uniquely yours can feel scary and alone. But here's a secret. You're not alone. Life and business coach Marianne McKenzie, founder of the Real Woman in Business program, is an expert at guiding women who want to create radically engaged lives and businesses. Marianne knows that successful businesses and the creative minds that run them require more than just knowledge. They require self-awareness, a success mindset, winning strategy, and a tribe of other real women. Marianne coaches heart-centered entrepreneurs to expand and engage their personal lives and passionately grow their businesses. Visit MarianneMcKenzie.com today to join us. You don't have to walk alone.
Are you trying to get from point A to point B and need a little advice? Connect with the counselors at OMTimes Advisors. Whether you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual intuitive, the advisors participating at advisors.omtimes.com were carefully chosen based on their gifts, skills, and professionalism.
Me, a cat moving in with a new human. It took a little getting used to. She has these weird games she likes to play, like this giant feather. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. She sticks it in my face. I swat it away. It's almost like she thinks I enjoy it. But seeing how much fun she gets out of it, well, I guess it makes it all worth it. Humans.
A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet. Be that person. Adopt. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the ShelterPetProject.org.
A conscious lifestyle for a mindful life. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Hi, you're listening to Inspired Conversations. I'm your host, Linda Joy, and with me today is Bailey Gaddis of Feng Shui Mommy, creating balance and harmony for blissful pregnancy, childbirth, and motherhood, and that's everything we've really been talking about today. So you shared so much of yourself in the last few segments, Bailey, but I'm curious because I know what it takes for a woman to step out, and you just said for a long time you used to be like closed, but to write a book, especially a book on this topic, you had to like peel back parts of yourself.
Yeah.
When you made that decision, when you felt that calling, like I have to write this book, walk us through that process of what it felt like.
Yeah, all of, that vulnerability that I talked about, when you're first pregnant, I really felt all of that come back, because while I had been writing, for different magazines and websites and, was familiar with the publication process in that regard, I had no idea, what it would be like getting a book published. And it was, and I say that in so many ways it was like having a second child. While of course like the physical sensations weren't there, all the emotions were, the feeling of vulnerability and transformation, and really having to dig deep into myself. It was all there. And one thing that got me through it was having this like deep knowingness the whole time that like I have to write this book. There's no other option. I have to write it, and I have to get it published. And nobody else was telling me that, And I feel like if somebody else was saying, "Oh, you have to do this," and I really wasn't feeling it, it probably wouldn't have happened. But I did. I just had that calling, that yearning, and so I spent, oh my gosh, about a year working on the proposal and really figuring out like what is this book? What wants to be born? And along the way, I had incredible female mentors that made all the difference. And in the process of finding the literary agent and then, selling the proposal, it's such a process and such a learning experience. And I was somebody that before becoming a mother, I didn't like to admit that I didn't know something. I didn't like to ask for help. I thought like, oh, I'll just figure it out on my own. And publishing this book, almost more so than becoming a mom, I was forced to step out of my comfort zone and say, I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. And asking those questions and allowing myself to be vulnerable. So it was pretty amazing. And then writing the book, it just flowed out of me once I, had the deal with my wonderful publisher, New World Library. I had 5 months to write the book, and I would drop off my son at his babysitter's house, and I would drive to the park around the corner, roll down my windows, and I would write in my car. I wrote the whole book in my car, so I wouldn't have like internet, I wouldn't have distractions. And yeah, it just flowed out. I knew what I needed to say and how I, wanted to support women. And oh my God, I started crying the first time I held the book in my hand, just like I did when I first held my son. There's so many correlations there. But and I'm looking forward to having another baby and actually, digging into the book and really applying, all these principles to the next pregnancy.
I love it. I love that it just poured out of you. That's when you know, right? Like you said, no one was telling you to write this book. Your soul was telling you to write this book.
Right.
And,
exactly.
Yeah, and I love stuff like that. So now, last few minutes, I should say, we talked about some guidance that you'd give for women in the first trimester of her pregnancy, and then for women once their baby arrives. Let's say we have a listener right now who's pregnant and is wrapped up in a little bit of the fear stuff, that happens to permeate out there, especially if she goes online. What's some of the guidance you would share with her?
Yeah, number one, acknowledging that it's okay to have those fears, those worries, those anxieties, and it's part of a process. And you might see women or read Facebook posts about women that are just, they seem so blissful about pregnancy and all of it, but I can promise you, every single one of them, they also have those fears. They just might not talk about it. So recognizing that it's okay, number one. And then number two, recognizing that there are ways to begin dissolving those fears. So acknowledgement is that first step, realizing like, okay, what am I afraid of? In the book, one of the fear release exercises I have in the fear release chapter is, making a list. It's like, okay, think about all the different areas of your life and figure out what is, stressing you out. What are you afraid of? And then from there, I have clear steps on how we begin dissolving those fears. And while we likely don't just like completely erase a fear or a worry from our mind, we can take away a lot of the emotion that's attached to it. So we can think about something that we're worried about, like childbirth, for example. If you're pregnant, you might still think about it and say, okay, I don't really know exactly how it's going to go. I know that the unknown is there, but when you take away the emotion that's attached to that fear of the unknown, then you don't get that, like, and I'm going to use an example for my own life. When I would think about the final phase of labor, my breathing would get really shallow. I would like start shaking a little bit. I had this really intense emotional experience when I would think about the unknown of that. But once I realized, okay, I'm afraid of that, and how can I educate myself on that? I took steps to just start dissolving the fear of the unknown, and and it really opened me up. So, oh man, yeah, the fear is a big thing, and really, I'm looking at all of the different chapters in the book, and each and every one, for the most part, there are either really clear ways to dissolve fear or kind of subtle ways that are woven into every chapter about how to start feeling less fear and feeling more empowered.
And it's about stepping towards the fear, right, and acknowledging it, because what we don't acknowledge just gets bigger. And I love that you cover that in the book, because like you said, so many of us go, oh, I must be the only one feeling this, right? Mm-hmm. And I love that you're validating for the reader that, no, darling, just because you may look from the outside looking in that no other, pregnant mom is feeling this way. The truth is, most likely they are, because it's part of the path. It's part of the journey.
Oh, absolutely. And knowing that the title of this chapter in my book is Dissolving Fear Through Acceptance. And I think acceptance, not saying like, oh, I'll just live with the fear, it's fine, but accepting yourself for having those fears, accepting that, again, that's just part of it, but there are ways to make it less crippling.
Oh, I got to tell you, I am so glad that we were able to get you on the show and talk about this. It's such an important topic. It opens a new way of thinking for many women who may be caught up and only getting access to the, I call it the fear-based stuff that's put out there. And I got to say, too, your writing can be seen everywhere, because you're a regular contributor to media outlets, including Disney's Babble, Working Mother, Pregnancy and Newborn, Huffington Post, Cosmopolitan, Redbook, Woman's Day. This is really, this message is really being embraced, Bailey, and I'm so happy that it is.
Thank you. Well, oh my gosh, it was such a pleasure talking with you, Linda. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, you too, and I can't wait to share your wisdom. I know you have something coming out in Aspire magazine soon, so I'm excited to share your wisdom with my audience, with Aspire, as well as here on the Inspired Conversation show. So thank you again, Bailey, for being here.
Thank you, Linda.
And everyone, I want to invite you, please swing by BaileyGaddis.com, learn more about Bailey's work, her book, and check out her amazing blog posts. And until next time, choose love, choose joy, choose happiness. Blessings, everyone.
Thanks for listening to Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy. Join our sacred space every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern and meet leading female visionaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. Inspired Conversations with Linda Joy is a soulful venue where guests share the obstacles they've overcome, along with wisdom and lessons learned on their personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired conversations to empower you on your path to authentic and soulful living.